My name is Susan Avery, and I serve on the worship committee. For those visiting FPC for the first time, we welcome you. Please let us know you are here by filling out one of our visitor information cards in the pews. And I don't have one to show you, but it's a cardstock form in the pew. And you drop it in the plate or give it to an usher. Our minister, staff, and board are listed on the front of the order of service. Please feel free to ask me or any of these people for more information. If you would like a large print order of service or hymnal, or one of our small radios that can assist you in hearing the service here in the sanctuary or elsewhere in our building, please ask an usher. Nursery care is available during the service. Children in kindergarten through 8th grade usually attend the first part of the service and then leave for classes. And I think that's happening today. Once a month, we have a children's chapel where children begin their time in the vestry. For high school youth programming and other information, please see the bulletin or ask our RE director or an usher. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall, which is downstairs or elevator at that end of the building, or in a breakout room if you're joining us online. I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements in our order of service, and also invite you to check out the webpage. In addition, I want to remind you of a party for our longtime members, Neil Saunders and Ingrid Holcrum, who will be leaving us soon. And there's a party this afternoon at 4 o'clock to celebrate them. And we ask for a potluck hors d'oeuvre type of food. Shana Dumont Garr is a member of this congregation, a doctoral candidate at the Institute for Doctoral Studies in the Visual Arts, and a contemporary art curator at Emerson Contemporary in Boston. She will be leading our service today. And now, let us come together for a time of community, singing, and worship.
Thank you for a great introduction, Susan. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shana. So happy to see so many of you here today. And because this, I wanted to begin a little bit with my mini elephant in the room that you actually brought up for me. This is a lot about Henry David Thoreau, who is sometimes referred to as Thoreau. And there are lots of reasons, and there's lots of smart people who have strong opinions. But I'm letting you know that I realize that in Concord it's pronounced Thoreau, but I'm probably going to revert to the pronunciation I've done since I was a little girl living in Maine, Thoreau. So, it's a very small lingual pronunciation note, because some of you will probably go, oh, does this lady really know what she's talking about? And she pronounces his name with the stress on the second syllable. So I thought I would just let you know what I mean by making through place and a little bit of a preview of what we will talk about, and also the reason why the songs and the hymns are what they are. We're very focused on place today, and we're focused on the proximity to Walden Pond. And so I believe that Henry David Thoreau's spectral presence is inspiring a lot of what I say today. I'm a little bit especially nervous today. I've led services probably about 4 times in the past few years. This time, I'm the most nervous. And it's because what I'm saying is probably mostly a combination of what Thoreau wanted me to say and things that I'm thinking about. Anyway, I just thought I'd also let you know that this feeling of awe and appreciation that we're near such a storied place is why I wanted to share what we'll be talking about today. This idea of the New England Transcendentalists and their impact on how we, as residents of this area, perceive the world. And part of what comes into what I'm sharing is I was the curator at Fruitland's Museum for 6 years, and in their collection, they focus on the Transcendentalists in part, along with Shakers, the indigenous people of the United States, and also landscape and portrait paintings. But the first part of their collection, founded by Clara Sears, was the Transcendentalists. And it's partly because a little red farmhouse at the foot of the hill was where Bronson Alcott and Charles Lane decided to start a new utopia that was vegan, to the point where one of the women who joined was asked to leave when they realized she had cheese in her suitcase. And they didn't ever surpass 13 members. They were hungry and cold, and after 6 months, in the gloom of January, they departed the very hilly part of Harvard, Massachusetts. But those stories endure, and in the collection at Fruitland's, it includes things like the pencils that it said that Thoreau had made, as well as handwritten essays that were later published. So I'm thinking about how the material and the ephemeral, how memories and matter, they're thought of as opposites, but really they're part of a cycle of belonging and becoming. So that's what we'll be thinking about today. And now I'm going to invite Tommy Garr to read a poem from Walden as I light the chalice.
It is no dream of mine to ornament a line. I cannot come near to God in heaven, when I live to Walden even. I am its snowy shore, and the breeze that passes over. In the a hollow of my hand darts water and its sand, and its deepest resort lies high in my thought.
And if you would please now join me in body and or spirit, so we can sing hymn number 44, We Sing of Golden Mornings. You'll find this in the Singing the Living Tradition, as well as songs. Thoreau was Becky Walden Emerson. And if you'll please join me in a covenant and affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag peoples, as well as honoring and recognizing the Black and African peoples whose unpaid and forced labor built this country and our state. We celebrate and work in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and people of color organizations leading the movement for our collective liberation in line with our UU values.
I'd like to invite Tommy again. He is going to lead a time for all ages. And this is the time when we invite those young in their celestial age or their bodily age to come forward and join us. And if you prefer to stay where you are, I think that's great. We'll still have a little gathering.
So today we're talking about somebody named Henry David Thoreau, who we already heard a bit about from my mom, and he was born not too far away from us. He's born near, he was born in Concord, Massachusetts, which is the town pretty close to us. Have any of you ever been to Walden? Thoreau, he was born in Concord, and he went to Harvard College, and he met a friend, a lifelong friend named Ralph Walden Emerson, and they were together, and they were called transcendentalists. But specifically Thoreau, he decided to do a project, and he lived in the woods at Walden Pond. And when he was there, he wrote a little book that talks about his experience there at Walden Pond and the different stories he has and what he thought about it, and he was
Now we've come to the time in our service when we bring forward joys and sorrows. And this will be led by Dr. Crescenzo's, one of our lead ministers.
I think we've heard from everybody so far this morning, so we'll light 2 final candles, one for joys and sorrows that remain in our hearts from wherever we sit this morning, and one for the cost of war. Thank you.
And in light of the joys and sorrows we've heard, and those we hold within us that we don't share aloud right now, let's just take a moment of silence together.
And now, if you would join me
In body and or spirit, we'll sing together the Spirit of Life. You can find this on the screen or in this book again.
we share our weekly offering with Concord Prison Outreach. You may also donate a check made out to First Parish Church and online at the link that's in the program. And while this proceeds, I thought I would share, first of all, my adoration and gratitude to Trevor. It's always fun to collaborate
On the music. And this next song, Tom Bowling by Charles Dibdin, is a song that Thoreau enjoyed singing and playing with his flute. So keeping that in mind as we hear it. The title, Keeping My Celestial Relations Fresh, Belonging and Becoming with Thoreau, is a little bit wordy, but hopefully it'll become clear. What meaning am I getting at by the end? Maybe if we come back to that idea of thinking through place and really being where we are right now. Because I think this is as much about Walden Pond as it is about Thoreau. And the Wachusett Line MBTA commuter rail runs past Walden, and I hear that same train's whistle when I'm at my house every day. And this audible link takes me to the pond in my mind each time I hear it, and it has a calming effect on me. So the pond, how many of you have, I think that was a great prompt, Tommy. How many of you been there by show of hands? Okay. I know most of you have probably driven past it if you haven't been to the banks. And it's not quite as pleasant from Route 2. But if you're able to take that right and park, it's one of those ponds that could evoke almost a lake at some points, although you can see the bank from one end. It's beautiful. It's lined by trees. It's amazingly deep. And as an aside, Thoreau did a survey of the depth in 1846. He described the process in Walden. I brought the 3 books that I'm citing. They're over here with my little notes. You're all welcome to have a look after, and I'll bring them to coffee hour too. So in 1846, he did find the deepest point, 102 feet. And it turns out that modern sonar reads the same depth. And there is a reason beyond its beauty and its proximity to Boston that Walden is such a famous place. It is the title of a book by Thoreau, one of the Concord Transcendentalists, son of pencil makers, friend of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and a celebrated naturalist. So, who were these transcendentalists? What were they up to? They believed they could directly access truth, God, rightness, whatever word you'd want to use to describe it. And I do believe these words are not interchangeable, but that multiple words should be used to fill in. They believed that they didn't need to go through a priest, a pastor, or a book, that by going outside and looking closely at what was around them, by thinking through place, they could get to the heart of things, to what is necessary. As I was researching, I was reminded that Thoreau can be tough. He is incredibly direct. In Walden, he criticizes the indigenous people, specifically a basket maker, for not adapting more readily to capitalism. He sharply judges his fellow Concordians for being mediocre and conformist. He said, quote, "I have lived some 30 years on this planet, and I have yet to hear the first syllable of valuable or even earnest advice from my seniors." End quote. He was probably considered pretty fresh by these elders, I would guess. And soon I'll get to why I think he does this. With his bold and memorable writing, I argue that Thoreau has become the closest thing we have to a local God. And let's consider that idea of transcending, that there is another place that is better than here. A place that is perfect. While alive, that perfection that we can only imagine might guide our actions. And one day, when we die, we'll go to a heavenly realm where we're reunited with loved ones who passed before us. There isn't tension between what is considered transcending and what is considered material, between what is imagined and what is accessible to our senses. So I'm going to be telling a couple little stories within stories. And the first one is that one evening years ago, Tommy was more like this tall, than this tall. We were swimming in Walden Pond. It was a weeknight. We'd had a picnic. And then we realized that something was off because there was a helicopter flying overhead. Then boats came. Then voices came over loudspeakers to ask us to leave the water. We gradually left and then realized that a person had drowned. It was a young man in his late 20s, and he was there with a group of his friends. Another drowning occurred at Walden Pond the year before and the year after, all in the month Thoreau was born, in July. The United States is a young nation, and we look to ancient Greece and Rome for how to be reverent. In ancient Greece, around 400 BCE, Plato, a student of Socrates, wrote about an ideal society. His writing often referred to perfect forms, that, if we can imagine it, we could reach toward perfection. He wrote 400 years before the birth of Jesus, as though forecasting it about a heavenly realm. The Republic, the book I'm referring to, is written as a conversation. In it, he has his teacher, Socrates, saying, quote, "So, since gods are good, they are not, as the masses claim, the cause of everything. Instead, they are a cause of only a few things that happen to human beings, while of most they are not the cause." End quote. And then later in the Republic, Socrates is voiced as saying, "Haven't you realized that our souls are immortal and never destroyed?" Plato distrusted artists, including poets and storytellers. He wrote, quote, "Be aware that hymns to the gods and eulogies of good people are the only poetry we can admit into our city. For if you admit the honeyed muse, whether in lyric or in epic poetry, I think I have a typo here. The pain, it'll introduce pain in your city. Oh yeah, pleasure and pain, sorry about that. Pleasure and pain will be kings in your city instead of law and the thing that has always been generally believed to be best, reason," end quote. So this idea that reason was to be number one is something that was an assumption that not necessarily everyone agrees with, but it's often how us humans proceed forward in the West. So in addition to founding continental philosophy, the ancient Greeks also lived by myths, including one about the Minotaur. The Minotaur, or it could also be meaning the bull of Minos, was the product of a love affair between Pasiphae, the wife of King Minos, and a bull that the King Minos, had failed to sacrifice. Minos had prompted this affair as a form of retaliation. The king and his family were ashamed of the Minotaur. He was hidden underground in a labyrinth built by an architect, Daedalus. The Minotaur was ravenous. He demanded the sacrifice of 7 healthy young men and women to be fed to him regularly. In this myth, Theseus emerges to save the day. King Minos' daughter Ariadne fell in love with him, and she collaborated with Daedalus to give Theseus a ball of red thread so he could find his way out of this labyrinth. Theseus was able to navigate the maze to its center, fight the Minotaur to the death, and rescue those youths. But thousands of years later, the instinct or the need for sacrifice persists. I thought of this myth that summer evening when that man in his late 20s, there with his friends, drowned in Walden Pond. It makes me wonder if when a person is revered beyond the limits of what one human can do or know, Is that our way of understanding mysteries that we as humans can't really solve? And in a way, I'm sharing with you my own myth that I started to write to myself that evening to help comprehend the tragic loss of life. But my interpretation positions Thoreau as the Minotaur, the unruly one, the interrupter, the one who might shock, the one who's ravenous. I take the commuter rail to work, and I sit on the right side of the train so that I can see Walden Pond as we whizzed by Concord. Someone spray painted a stencil of Thoreau's face onto a mural of Walden Pond at the Concord stop. I'll bet some of you can picture it. And this face seems to be asking me something every time. I don't know if this is what it's asking me, but I'll share a question I ask myself every day. After we die, where do we go next? We can resolve the differences between what we imagine and what we can feel, see, and experience with all of our senses. So I bring forward Jane Bennett, a contemporary philosopher who does write about this tension between thought and matter of Thoreau. She did write a book about him in 1994, and she wrote, quote, "Yet though nature is replete with divinely inspired meaning, there is an ambiguity in nature that renders it less than truly transparent. The meaning of nature, ultimately God's intentions, is thus open to interpretation," end quote. She's writing to ask why she thinks Thoreau sought out wildness. And I think it does come across in Walden that he saw those direct experiences as an antidote to convention, tradition, and normality. He trusted his direct experience. And as Bennett has described it, he transcendentalized the ordinary. Thoreau, more than any of the other transcendentalists, looked directly to nature. When he wrote Walden, he was most curious about understanding what of life is essential and timeless. He understood the urge for people to behave and prioritize reason. He understood these urges and these thoughts as the thing that limited them and what kept them from being their true selves. So, in my opinion, Thoreau would have disagreed with Plato. And I wanted to read two passages from Walden where he delights in what he finds by Walden Pond. So these are relatively long, but just keep in mind that I'm quoting him. In the first one, he's describing the play of light on the water. And he says, "The whole bank, which is from 20 to 40 feet high, is sometimes overlaid with a mass of this kind of foliage or sandy rupture for a quarter of a mile on one or both sides, the produce of one spring day. What makes this sand foliage remarkable is its springing into existence thus suddenly. When I see on one side the inert bank, for the sun acts on one side first, and on the other this luxuriant foliage, the creation of an hour, I am affected as if in a peculiar sense I stood in the laboratory of the artist who made the world and me, had come to where he was still at work, sporting on the bank, and with the excess of energy, strewing his fresh designs about." And the second quote's a little longer, but I hope you agree with me that, boy, that guy can write. "On the 29th of April, as I was fishing from the bank of the river near the 9-acre corner bridge, standing on the quaking grass and willow roots where the muskrats lurk, I heard a singular rattling sound, somewhat like that of the sticks which boys play with their fingers, when, looking up, I observed a very slight and graceful hawk, like a nighthawk, alternately soaring like a ripple and tumbling a rod of 2 over and over, showing the underside of its wings, which gleamed like a satin ribbon in the sun, or like the pearly inside of a shell. This sight reminded me of falconry, and what nobleness and poetry are associated with that sport. The merlin, it seemed to me, might be called, but I do not care for its name. It was the most ethereal flight I had ever witnessed. It did not simply flutter like a butterfly, nor soar like the larger hawks, but it sported with proud reliance in the fields of air, mounting again and again with its strange chuckle. It repeated its free and beautiful fall, turning over and over like a kite, and then recovering from its lofty tumbling as if it had never set foot on terra firma. End quote. Based on these passages, I think we could call Thoreau an earthist rather than a transcendentalist. We can't know what's next, but when we, with our senses, notice things that are beyond what we expected, it makes being an earthly being experience a kind of perfection during moments of being present. These moments of presence do connect us to the celestial, and I think Thoreau was demonstrating that in certain passages of Walden. It cultivates trust in our own senses and in the forms and beings we can perceive with them. And so I just wanted to conclude that way of saying that becoming and being are always a process and always an interpretation. But I do think Thoreau was one of the people who is remembered for helping us trust the importance of what we're seeing right before us. And this might have felt a little bit like almost like a topography, and I know I switch subjects sometimes, so I wanted to let everyone know that I'm going to be publishing this on my Substack. So if anyone wanted to read it again, I will share it to the emails that we share with each other. And just thank you all so much for letting me venture in that way and share some of my ideas. Now I'll come back to earth because I think I was flying with the Merlin. And I wanted to invite you to rise in body and or spirit for hymn number 345.
Arrived there, the little house they fill, knee look for entertainment where none was. Rest is their feast, and all things at their will. The noblest mind the best contentment has.
And we'll conclude today by hearing Walking Homage à Thoreau. And after that, there's the time to greet your neighbor. And I wanted to just remind you that you're welcome to leaf through the books if you're interested. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I knew